Has one color TV set for sale cheap. Telephone 626-1313 and ask for Mrs. Donnelly, who lives with him after 7 p.m. Wednesday. The Reverend A.J. Jones informs us that he has received several annoying telephone calls because of an incorrect ad in yesterday's paper. It should have read, the Reverend A.J. Jones has one color TV set for sale cheap. Telephone 626-1313 after 7 p.m. and ask for Mrs. Donnelly, who loves with him. Thursday. Please take notice that I, the Reverend A.J. Jones, have no color TV set for sale. I have smashed it. Don't call 626-1313 anymore. I have not been carrying on with Mrs. Donnelly. She was, until yesterday, my housekeeper. Friday. Wanted, a housekeeper. Usual housekeeping duties, good pay. Love in. Reverend A.J. Jones, telephone 626-1313. I hope that never happens to me. Or, did you see the story of the woman in Atlanta named Teresa Culpepper, who has been in jail for 53 days? Why? Her name is Teresa. The story is that she called the police to report that her truck had been stolen in August, but when they showed up at her home, they arrested her for aggravated assault. Aggravated assault committed by someone named Teresa. Her birth date didn't match. This is her lawyer talking. Her birth date didn't match. Her address didn't match. Her description didn't match. Other than the name Teresa, nothing matched. The police say they are investigating. That's a mistake, right? Could have been you, could have been me. And by the way, happy day before the end of the world. You all know the name of Harold Camping? Okay? Harold Camping, back in May, predicted that May 21st would be the last day. That would be Judgment Day. I think he was wrong. I think he knows that he was wrong, but a lot of people believed him. Unfortunately, after that date, Mr. Camping had a stroke. But he is again predicting the end of the world on October 21st. Will he be wrong again? I hope so. We'll see. I say all of that because I've been thinking about something. Before the turn of the 20th century, there was a publication that was started called The Christian Century. It was called that because the scholars who thought it up, the scholars who created it, were convinced that the 20th century was going to be the most Christian century that ever had been. Turned out that more people were killed in war and other acts of violence in the 20th century than all other centuries combined ever in history. But the Christian Century continues. It's a publication I take. The Christian Century, Thinking Critically, Living Faithfully. About a year ago, they published this article called No-Shows. Research had been done showing that in several denominations of the church, there was an uptick in average worship attendance in the 90s. But from 2001 to 2010, in those same denominations, there was a slight downturn in average worship attendance. Nobody knows why. The writer of the article offered several educated guesses, but that's all they are, is educated guesses. I was curious, so I posted the article, and I got several responses. One of which is from somebody with whom I used to work. Not Becky, but somebody else whom we both know. And she wrote, I just had an instant message conversation with a now grown former youth of mine, very active at the local level when she was a youth. And she shared that she's sick of the so-called Christians who do not act very Christ-like. The politics and fighting and hypocrisy within the church, but that she loves God. And that set me to thinking over the last year, since this was published, about me. Have I been wrong? How have I been wrong? When have I been wrong? Now, I'm not going to tell you that I've thought about it 24/7 in the 379 days since that was published, but I have thought about it off and on. And have I been wrong? The answer is undoubtedly I've been wrong about one thing or another. Probably some others would tell you that I've been wrong about things that I might not say that I was wrong about those things. But I'm sure I have been. And I could name a few. I'll tell you about one. Ira mentioned my son a little while ago. When our son was in high school, we lived in a community in northeast Kansas, and our son and daughter had several of the same friends. Over the years that they were in high school, those friends were in our home. They were in their friends' homes. We had several great conversations with those friends, and several parties were held in the basement of our home, and Debbie and I usually made popcorn and stuff like that for those parties. Eventually, we were supposed to stay upstairs. The parties were held downstairs. Eventually, they usually came upstairs, and we had some of those great conversations. During our son's senior year, he was a part of an organization called the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And during his senior year, he was elected president of the FCA. That was also an election year. And our son let it be known that he was backing a particular candidate for a particular office. And some of those folks who were our son's friends and who had been in our home and whom we knew, because of that, questioned our son, questioned our son's faith, questioned his Christianity, and I was mad. I discovered when I became a parent that there's something that happens to you. And I knew something of it before I became a parent, but it became even stronger at that point. Maybe if you have somebody in your family, brothers or sisters or cousins that are important to you, you know something about this. I have a younger sister, and growing up, I realized that I could pick on her, I could tease her, but nobody else better. You know? It becomes even stronger when you have a child. I didn't want to see my son hurt. Right now, I'm not talking about my son's friend's attitude toward him. I'm talking about my attitude at that time toward them. I was not very loving. I was not very merciful. I was not very Christ-like. The whole thing kind of went away after the election, of course. But I've thought about that several times